Have you ever found a dream job that turned into a Gorham nightmare? What about a decently paying job that made quitting and going bankrupt seem like a vacation compared to the painful proctological exam that was clocking in? Or maybe it was your first job and you didn't know why, but you just knew you had to get out as fast as possible. You see, toxic workplaces can abound even in the greatest of job fields. But this week's author interview will help you figure out the problem literally isn't you, it's them. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and this is the second interview of Author Awareness April. Happy Saturday and welcome back to The Right Way. We've had one fantastic interview with E.B. Hunter last week, and I had a blast putting that together. I'm hoping you watching from home got something fantastic out of it as well. I've got 3 more interviews, including today's interview left, and I'm excited. But I still have a couple of other announcements for you. First, I will be leading my comedy writing workshop at the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library in just 1 week. That's going to be on April 22nd from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The cost is free, so you don't have to pay any money, but all you need to bring is a pen, a notebook, and your funny bone. And if you're local to Kings County, come on down. I would love to see you there. It would be a great way to show your support for our library. Second, as mentioned in last week's episode, you can access each of these interviews in their uncut, unedited versions by becoming a supporter on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There are other cool rewards for patrons, including access to an audio recording of one of my short stories that nobody else has access to. You can sign up at the link down in the video description. Lastly, speaking of that short story, it's called Emily. And I just got word from Collective Tales Publishing, that is Jonathan Reddick and Elizabeth Suggs, both of who have been on the show in the past. They have accepted the story into their new anthology called Collective Chaos, which features stories set in dystopic and cosmic horror scenarios. I connected with Winifred a few years back, and she has been really wonderful as a person to get to know. She writes about what signs to look for if you suspect your workplace to be toxic and what to do to avoid it, as well as how to overcome it, because those kinds of situations, like, a bad marriage or being an indie author on Amazon, wink wink, can quickly become abusive. So please join me in welcoming Winifred Summer. Winifred, thank you for joining me on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell me about what you write and what the work that you've been doing on your book.
Sure. So funny enough, I started in poetry. That was kind of like my beginning as far as writing goes. I was always into writing poems. And down the line, I started to think about writing books, but I was thinking more so fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, life happens, and I started to really think about what's going on in the workforce. A little bit about me: I'm an HR professional currently, and I have been for some years now. And so I see a lot going on in the terms of like toxic work environment. That's a very big topic these days. It's always been around, but I feel like now in today's time, people are becoming a little more comfortable being vocal about things that are going on at work. And being that I'm in HR and I studied HR, I felt like I could provide, some great insight, I guess. And so I wrote this book. It is called The Toxic Job Playbook. It's currently available on Amazon. It's also available in Busboys and Poets if anybody is familiar with that place. It's also housed there in the Howard County location. And people can also order it from me. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And we'll come back to how people can get a hold of it towards the end of the interview. But so, how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or was this something that you felt compelled to do because of your experiences in HR?
Well, I've always wanted to write. I've always, ever since I was a kid, I was always like a heavy reader. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to really go out. I couldn't go out and play. I couldn't, do kid stuff. I was pretty much home a lot, and my dad would just buy all these books. He'd always take me and my sister to the library every weekend, and I really fell in love with books. It was like my sense of adventure since I wasn't really, out there doing stuff, climbing trees. Like I never was doing any of that stuff. So I really fell in love with the world of books, and I always said that I wanted to contribute in some way by writing my own pieces for other people to enjoy. I didn't know what exactly, but I always wanted to write a book.
That's awesome. And I think that's parenting done right on your dad's part, getting you involved in reading and taking you to the library. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. So, with that, what are some of your inspirations? You said you started with poetry. What inspires you with poetry?
Well, I had an assignment. I believe it was in second grade, and we had to write a poem. Like they were just like, "Hey, you're writing a poem." We were just starting to learn about poetry, and so we were able to freestyle. And I remember I wrote something about a bumblebee trying to sting me. I wish I would have saved it because the teacher thought it was so legendary. Like when she went around and was like, checking to make sure every student was writing, and when she came to my page, not only did I have a poem because I was just such a little artsy kid, I also drew a picture of a bumblebee and flowers. I'm so extra. So she picks up the paper and she starts to read it and she was like, "Oh my gosh, wow, did you write this?" And I was just like, yes. And so she just stops the class and she's like, "Everybody, listen to this." And she just goes into it and she was so proud. And I just remember afterwards, she told me to never stop writing poetry and that I had a gift. So that's kind of where it started.
And then with everything that you experienced job wise, you just felt compelled to write this book, the Toxic Workplace Playbook. Was there any particular event or inciting incident that really you know jump started the process of writing the book?
There were several instances, honestly. And so, actually, on the cover of the book, there are three red X's right there. And each X actually represents a job that was toxic. So, I had three major toxic job experiences. And those really like fueled me. Like, it was a mix of anger and sadness. And it was just like so much built up inside of me that I actually wrote a poem about it, and that's kinda how it started. I was writing a poem in the bathroom stall at a toxic job, and when I read it back, I was just like, "Yeah, this is good." Like, it was like a stress reliever, and
Hmm.
I thought that's all it was gonna be. It was just like one poem. Okay, I wrote it, got it out of my system. But something in me said, "No, like, write more, like, keep writing," and before I knew it, I was writing down a list of things that really irritated me about work, and those things then became the chapter titles, which then became my book. So it just kind of came together.
Just kind of snowballed from there, huh?
Definitely.
So, what was one of the hardest parts or biggest challenges with the development and the writing and the process of putting together this book?
There was a couple things because initially I was thinking maybe this book could still be like a fiction story, kind of like a book that was loosely based on something I went through and just kind of, make it fun, make it funny. I actually wanted to, write a book, like a fiction book, and then mail it to each corporate office. Because I'd be like, yeah, I would make it close enough to the experience I had, but not close enough. And then maybe they could, like, hey, figure like, oh, she's talking about us, but I didn't think it was going to be a book that was just kind of like straight up nonfiction information, straight to the point. I wanted it to be like creative and fun and colorful. So it's interesting how my brain kind of shifted, because it's like, this is no laughing matter. Like, don't write this kind of like silly, I don't know, take on something that is actually very tragic and affecting so many people. And so that is kind of the challenge that I took, because I was just like, kind of back and forth with how exactly to write, what to write. Then, because I am in the HR industry, I was just like, oh man, like, what do I share? Like, what do I not share? Am I going to like ruin my chances of, achieving XYZ in my career because this book is going to pop up? Maybe, maybe not. And maybe some people will be upset with some of the things that I said. Again, I didn't, not again, because I didn't say it, but I didn't like out anyone. I did share though some of my personal experiences, not many, but the people who were there might be able to pick it up and be like, oh, she is basically talking about me. So there were some like worries about overshare and but at the end of the day, I believed that this was, purpose work for me. Like, I went through all these things and I got through all these things so that I could help other people. So yeah, so I just committed to my vision and pushed through.
If you were to give any advice to other would-be authors out there, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to go for it. I know that sounds so simple, but I feel like most, I'm not going to say most, some writers, we like second guess ourselves and we want everything to be perfect. And maybe we think, we don't have what it takes. So we let somebody coming out with a similar book like stop us from trying to pursue what it is we want to do. I just recommend that everybody just give their self a fair shake and just go for it. It really, the hardest part is like the mental part, because there were points of time where I said, oh, nobody wants to read like a book about toxic work environment, or who am I to be like the voice box of human resources, but at the end of the day it worked out amazingly, better than I had ever imagined. And so I kind of wish I would have stepped on it sooner, but you know that's life.
That's awesome. So, how can people connect with you? How can they get a hold of your work? I know that you mentioned Amazon earlier, but how can they connect with you and get those copies directly from the author?
Sure. So if you go onto my website, which is www.winifredsummer.com, you will get links to everything, links to Amazon. The link to buy the book directly from me is there. I also have a product line, the Winifred Summer collection, where I have it just so happened to be here next to me as we record. So I have some mugs. This one says, I create opportunities for others. This one says, I'm highly skilled. There's like notebook, I have mouse pads, and these are just things that you can put in your workspace, whether you're working from home, it could be your home office, or maybe if you have an office somewhere in corporate or whatever. And it's just like a reminder of your contribution, whatever industry you're in your position for a reason. You are highly skilled, you should be proud of whatever it is you do. It doesn't matter what people may, I don't know, classify your job or your status as. You are highly skilled in what you do, which is why you're doing it. But yeah, so the link to that online shop is there. And yeah, Instagram. Uh, whew, Writing by Winifred is my personal page, but I do have another page that is just like strictly HR stuff, which is Winifred MSHRM. I had to think about it. It's Winifred MSHRM.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Winifred, thank you for being on the show. It was great having you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you so much. This was definitely a good time.
If you're interested in connecting with Winifred through social media or picking up copies of her book, you'll find those links by visiting the video description. If you're interested in seeing the uncut, unedited version of the interview, you can easily sign up as a supporter through Patreon. There are support tiers of $1, $3, and $5 per month, and all patron levels get access to the uncut interviews. But the higher you go, the cooler the rewards. Hey, thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on new videos. You can support the channel on Patreon and the merch store. Those links can be found down in the video description. And please make sure to tune in next week for the third interview in this year's Author Awareness Marathon featuring A.R. Mirabal.